Okay, so my apologies for the technical issues in connecting over Teams. Why it's not in there, I don't know. I don't want to show you guys all the technical again like I had done last week, but I have the Teams group set up. It's in the schedule. You guys are all part of that group. Well, you know what? Maybe I will show you. I'm just going to show you my screen to put this over here. So again, let's just start with the teams here. This is the team that I have for you guys, Computer Science 32S, and I can show the people who are in that group, and that should be all of you guys. Your name should be listed in there, along with a couple students, by the way, I noticed who had originally taken this course and then dropped it, so I to remove them from there, but this is everyone on there. Then if I go to the calendar of events, I can show you guys that this Theory of Knowledge live stream had been scheduled for every day. I know you guys don't have every day, but within there, you would see that that same section is included. So why it's not showing up, I don't know. I've got everything all connected up properly, I thought, for you guys, but that was the case. So my apologies again for that. Just going to do another quick scan to see if anyone who, oh, I see Matthew is now connected, so I'm going to change his attendance. So once again, I realize now that on my home page of my website, I had listed these periods, including the period 1, and that this link here may have been a mistake. So I think I've fixed that, but if it's not fixed, right on our website for our class, okay, which again, if you don't know, you can always email me, but the Theory of Knowledge 32 SIB class has this link to the Teams meeting that you can click on and then interconnect to Teams that way, which I hope has been the process for a lot of you guys. So I don't know. I just know that it's all set up, and so that we're ready to begin today's session there. I am recording this class, so I will put a link to it on our website. Now, just further down, speaking of our website, you can see right here that for the 2 classes we had last week, Wednesday and Thursday, I made notes on this little journal here of what we did, and I did record the Thursday class, and there's a link to that recording right there as well. It might have also shown up in your Teams section. Again, I'm not sure how much you guys rely on Teams, but I know that you can go to my website and there's a link there where I transferred the video over to a YouTube playlist. Obviously, then Friday and yesterday, Monday, we had no TOK class. And now here we are for today, May the 18th on Tuesday. I've already laid out some links to the stuff we're going to be looking at today. And when the class is over, the recording that I'm making right now, I will create a link to it on our website eventually by the end of the day today. Okay, and that'll also apply to tomorrow's class, right? Wednesday's class will be the same thing. Then we don't have class on Thursday or Friday this week. And I won't see you guys again because of the holiday till next Tuesday after the long weekend. So I see you guys today, I see you guys tomorrow, and then I don't see you again till next Tuesday. All right, so you might also remember, just slightly further down our website, was this calendar of agenda sort of stuff for the remote learning period. So this period here where we're in remote learning, and then as well, the period after remote learning for the rest of the course. I'm not going to go over all that again, but here we are on Tuesday, May the 18th, and we're going to be studying and starting our final way of knowing, formal way of knowing. There are some optional ones that we can look into called emotion. Okay, so we're going to start that today in a moment. I'm going to just do one more sort of scan of attendance here, see if some of those students who I had, yeah, Shaylin, I'm now marking present. And let's see, still looking for Ian. Still looking for, oh, Latanya is here. Changing Latanya. Still looking for Wendy. And still looking for Sam. Okay, so just two more students that I'll be looking out for. If any of you happen to notice them log in while I'm presenting, just give me a heads up so I can adjust attendance. So just looking for Wendy and Sam if they show up. Okay, so thank you for those of you who told me about some of the technical issues. I hope that you guys are finding a much easier way. Seems like, again, some of you still struggling to get connected over Teams. Please email me if you have any challenges that you have, and I'll try and resolve them. Okay, one quick thing. Last Thursday, we completed language. I completed my discussion of language, okay? And there's two things that you guys should look at now. We're not going to be doing some of the formal sort of activities that we would do normally because of this remote learning period. But there is a summative assessment for you guys to fill out right online. And in addition to that, there's also a phase 1 of the final assessments form for you guys to fill out. Let me just show you what those are. So the language summative assessment is similar to the other units where you fill out questions about the language unit. Think of it as an assignment, it's not a test. And then this one, this phase 1, is about the final assessments. We are now getting closer to those. So it's about the essay and it's about the presentation. This is going to come in 3 phases. Okay, so phase 1 is pretty short and pretty simple. It just asks if you've read this document, a document that I gave you a printed copy of in class, this document right here. So it just asks if you've read it. Have you looked at, as it says here, the essay titles that you'll be choosing from, which are on this last page. So have you looked at those? There's 21 different topics to look through. You're going to pick one of them, okay? Then it asks you what the minimum word count is on the essay, what the minimum presentation time is, and then just basically a ranking of what you know in terms of what a knowledge question is, and the units we've studied so far, and the units still to come. So some of these, like for example, imagination, we haven't studied it and we may not study it. So you obviously might want to check off not applicable. However, if you feel like you know what imagination means in this philosophical complex, you can answer one of the other options here. There's no real wrong answer here. This isn't a test. This is me judging kind of and measuring where you guys feel you are in terms of this course, okay? All right, so don't forget about those two things, okay? The language summative assessment and the phase 1 form, okay? Just so you guys know, coming up, if I just show you the calendar again, coming up next Wednesday on May the 26th, as we start to finish emotion, we'll be at stage 3 of the final. By tomorrow, we'll be looking at stage 2. Now, you don't have to do these on those particular days, obviously, because last Thursday I introduced stage 1, and as of this morning, it had 0 entries, so no one had done it at this point. And I know you guys have had a busy schedule, especially those of you that had to do the IB chemistry or the IB sports exercise. So I'm aware that you have other things to do. And that's why I'm not a guy who does late penalties or things like that. But I just want you guys to be aware of that stuff, because as we get closer to the end of the course, I wouldn't want a bunch of TOK stuff to pile up on you. And I'm flexible, right? If you guys feel like I'm overwhelming you with stuff, let me know. I don't think I am. I don't think I've given you guys so much stuff in TOK that you're overwhelmed with content. Okay. I'm just going to check my speakers because sometimes they fall asleep on me. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to pause for a second as I scan over looking for Ian, Wendy, and Sam to see if they have shown up. They have not. Okay. So I'm not hearing anyone. No one's typing in the chat window. But I actually want to start today, as we do with each new TOK unit, by analyzing where we're going. Now, you've seen me put this slide up here many times in this course, but now as we get closer to the end of the course and the big essay you guys are going to write and the TOK presentation that you're going to do, the idea of developing a knowledge question is going to become more and more important in terms of how it affects your TOK. It is the kind of big thing that the TOK course is built on. It's built on the idea of questioning knowledge, okay? So it's IB because of the international flavor of it, right? That's what the I and the IB stands for. So again, you've seen this slide before, but keep in mind your personal perspective versus a larger perspective, okay? You've seen this slide from me before. It's one way to visualize what a knowledge question is, that it moves up into a philosophical realm. It's not a practical realm like you have in other courses, like chemistry or biology or physics or math or history, where they stay and their knowledge claims are very grounded. They're grounded in evidence and in situations, whereas knowledge questions are more philosophical. They're not really about the content as much as things like, how do we know this? What are the assumptions? What are the ways we know this, etc. And again, we've been sort of touching on different aspects of that. Now, here's a slide maybe you haven't seen from me before, a little more specific about a way you could develop a knowledge question, okay? So you take a subject you're interested in. Say it's math, say it's history, say it's even subjects outside of the IB, like power mechanics or graphic arts or law. So you take this other subject and you take some knowledge claim from that subject area. Like, I know this from that subject area. That's what your schooling is about, right? That's what your learning is. You're getting those knowledge claims taught to you by teachers, reading them in textbooks all the time, okay? So then you start to move towards a questioning of that. Start to build a knowledge question. So the TOK course has kind of equipped you with some ways that you can look at this. Like, how could I question this knowledge? How could I insert a question to what the teacher's telling me that's about the knowledge, right? Like how the knowledge is acquired. And then that can start to develop into a knowledge question from there, okay? Obviously, this is gonna be better explained through examples, but let's kind of keep on where we're going today. So in terms of a checklist, okay, for this course, we have done reason, we've discussed it. We've discussed language, we've discussed sense perception. And in this unit, we're gonna look at emotion. So that's where we're going right now. These ones down here, imagination, faith, intuition, and memory, those are optional, right? Will those be important to you guys? Well, as you start getting closer to those final assessments, only you can answer that question, right? So as you start to think about the essay you're going to write or the presentation you're going to do, you might start to realize that maybe intuition is something that you'd like to have a little more context to. So we'll leave those as optional for now. We don't need to talk about them yet. If we were to look at the schedule I've laid out for you guys again, those optional ways of knowing, imagination, faith, memory, intuition, I've blocked out time for those after remote learning is completed, but before we start doing the formal presentations and stuff like that, okay? So I do have time blocked out for those, but just keep in mind that we may not do them at all. It depends on what you guys are going with here in TOK. Okay, quick summary of the units again we've just studied so far. So we've studied epistemology. Basically, that's not a way of knowing, that's about the word knowledge itself. We've studied it in formal, sort of philosophical context, like the knowledge justified true belief, and other things in that first unit to basically explain what knowledge is or is not. Then we studied reason as a way of knowing, right? That was our first way of knowing. And there was a bunch of little things I inserted into that unit that you can see kind of in this little infographic here. Here's some of the things we studied when we studied reason. Now, does that mean those things need to show up in your essay? No, it doesn't. But what I'm trying to do is give you guys something you could potentially have as content when you go to write your essay or do your presentation. Because I find after teaching TOK for 15 years, a lot of students don't know where to begin. They're like, well, I don't know for a TOK essay, what should I be writing about? So what I'm trying to do is provide you with a framework of things you could potentially write about. Then we studied sense perception, right? and the framework of sort of activities and different discussion topics in there. And then we studied language and just finished that, right? And some of the stuff we've just studied there. And if you're not sure, if you're going to do your essay and you go, yeah, I think I will, language, yes, it will be something I'll talk about in my essay. And now you start to think, well, what am I going to write about? Oh, yeah, well, there's that thing called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Maybe I should put that into my essay. Where can I find out more information about that? Well, of course you could Google it, but you can also go directly to my content that we had on my website and find information about it right there. Okay, that's the idea. Okay. So here is kind of all of those infographics put together, right? All of those infographics at once, sort of an overwhelming visual there for you. So what I normally do in TOK when we start a unit and have in the other units is ask you guys to define emotion. But what I'm going to do with this remote learning scenario is I want you guys to type in chat right now an emotion. Any word you can think of that is an emotion. So for example, I'll start off with happy. I'm going to type that into chat right now. I'm going to type in happy as an emotion. And I'd like you guys to all chat as well and put in an emotion right now into chat. Don't take a happy because I took that one already. Okay. And as you guys do that, I'm going to write them down on this slide. So happy. I just saw anger go in there. Someone. And I just saw sad go in there. And I saw confused. No kidding. And overwhelmed. Sorry, I'm a terrible speller. And envy. I see envy in there. Just trying to catch up. Some of them went by me without me noticing. Satisfied. Surprised. Surprised is an S. Disappointment. Oh, man. Thank God for a spell check. Oh, what else we got here? We got lots of good ones coming in. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to do a quick attendance check.
Mr. Walks?
Yes. Oh, Sam. I see Sam.
Sam will be joining in a couple seconds. He's apparently dealing with a dead computer.
Okay. He is logged in now, so I do have Sam on my login. So I've already changed his attendance, but thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate it. Sam is now marked present. Awesome. Okay, let me just jump back to chat and see if there's any more. Oh, confidence and depressed. Awesome. Confidence. Depressed. Do I have satisfied? Yeah, I do. I have disappointment. Yeah. Oh, free. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Okay, so we got some good ones here. So pull them apart. I don't want you guys to think that we put them together. They're one word emotions here. They didn't have to be one word, by the way. I didn't actually say that, did I? Okay. Oh, terror. Ooh, that's a good one. See that one popped up there? Terror. Thank you, Sam. And we're going to call this off in a second. Pour myself a new coffee, but I see someone is typing, so I don't want to disturb the idea flow right now for you guys. Okay, I think I got all of them on there. If I didn't, please let me know. And if a new one comes in. So that's what you guys have as emotions. Okay. Now, I didn't ask you to define emotion. I didn't, even though we've done that in other units. I said define reason, define sense perception, define language, right? What I asked you to do is write an emotion on there. Now, what I'd like to show you guys is a comparison to another class's. This is another class's version of this, right? So remember, when they went up and wrote it on the board, they wrote it, and some of them, as you can see, put in little emoticons and little things like that. And they, you know, sometimes they tried to be a little like melancholy. I thought that was interesting. Or woke. Okay. I'll also show you another class's so you can have more than just one example. So here's another class's version of this, right? A lot of the same stuff. Some people try to get fancy and they pick, you know, neat ones that we all had to look up. And what does that mean, kind of thing? Okay. Or something like this as well, you know, which is cool, right? That's definitely cool. So I'll go back to this because I'll be showing this obviously to the next year's TOK class. Do you guys want to add something in there that would impress another class, say next year? Do you guys also want to put in something there? I'll give you another second or so to see if you want to, maybe while you're doing this, Google search something really cool, or maybe you have something in mind. I can come back to this, but that's a neat idea as to what you guys can do with that. Now, could we categorize these? Could we put these into different categories, right? Like, could anger be put into one category and sad be put into another? Or do those two go together, right? Does sad go together with depressed, to go together with disappointment? Would there be ways to maybe group these into categories? It's possible, okay? It's definitely possible to do that. And what I'm going to show you guys is I'm going to present to you lots of different theories about emotion and how it affects knowledge in lots of different ways. So you're going to see stuff and I'm going to show them to you. We're going to challenge some of the things that are said, so we won't necessarily have to agree with it, but we're going to use it as a bit of a thought exercise to sort of analyze, like we did with reason, like we did with language and senses, ways to analyze how these things affect your acquisition of what you would call knowledge. Okay, let me give you a preview of, oh, I see a new one has come up, so I'm going to add that one on there. I'm going to copy it right off of chat. Okay, so there it is. And I'll even use the words that it was meant to portray. Loathing and disgust. Okay, so there. And actually, just based on what was written there, we could put those three words together because in a lot of ways, they're synonyms, right? They essentially mean the same thing. Okay. But what I want to show you guys is what I have planned for you guys in terms of an infographic for this unit. Just like if I go back and look at the way we looked at language by the end of the unit, that we studied what is language, the problem of meaning, translation problems, and that Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. That's the kind of stuff we studied over the course of the unit. I'm going to give you a preview of what we're going to be studying over the course of the emotions unit. So, whoops, which is this, right? So we're going to study what primary emotions are defined by a psychologist, how emotion can be an obstacle to knowledge. In other words, it can stand in the way of knowledge. We're going to talk about what rationalizations are in terms of emotion. And we're going to compare emotion versus reason. Like, we're going to put those two things into direct comparison with one another. So that's my plan, not necessarily in that order, but that's the sort of major concepts we're going to be studying in emotion. So if I put that together with everything we've studied in this course so far, this could be kind of a infographic sort of map out of all the stuff we've studied in the grade 11 TOK course, with an option to still do imagination, faith, intuition, and memory. So it gives you kind of a one look at the stuff that could go into a TOK essay or a TOK presentation. So when you are wondering, what do I write about? What do I present? This is some stuff you can start to touch on. And you think, well, how am I going to do that? Well, we did a lot of in-class activities that you could also do for your presentation and then adapt them into something different for your own presentation, as just an example of some of the stuff. Okay, well, thanks for some great presentation to start there with those listings of emotion. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to now start my presentation a little bit on emotion specifically. So as you can see here on our class website, okay, I'm now going to start essentially the stuff that's in this presentation. So in theory, you could always go back and look it over. You don't need to. This isn't a course that has tests in it, but you could go back and look through this presentation. And you can see here, this slide's going to come up here in a second. If you don't want to look at it in PowerPoint format, I've already translated it into notes. So you can also look at it in sort of a, whoops, that's language. That's the wrong link. I'll have to fix that, okay? Or if you were unable to connect over Teams, I certainly have a playlist of stuff that you could look at in terms of that. I'd actually, speaking of playlists, like to play you guys a video right now, just a sort of an intro before I hit my slideshow stuff about sort of emotion in general. I have a few videos I'd like to show you guys. I want to bring in a little psychology into this. However, I want to make sure that you guys can hear it. Okay, can you guys just tell me, did you just hear that video? Yes or no? You can either speak or write into chat. It was choppy, yeah, but did you hear it? No, okay. So sometimes that's a Teams thing. I gotta make sure that this is turned on. Include computer sound, okay. So we're gonna try this again.
Emotion. Most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear.
Okay, how was that for a test run? Yes, okay, good. Thank you, Matthew. So I'm gonna just start this video over again. It's only 2 minutes, so I'm gonna show this to you guys and then we'll discuss.
When we hear the word emotion, most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear. Those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our behaviors, helpful and unhelpful. Just where do our emotions come from? Our brain is wired to look for threats or rewards. If one is detected, the feeling region of the brain alerts us through the release of chemical messages. Emotions are the effect of these chemical messages traveling from our brain through the body. When our brain detects a potential threat, our brain releases the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare us for a fight or flight response. When we detect or experience something rewarding, such as someone doing something nice for you, our brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, or serotonin. These are the chemicals that make us feel good and motivate us to continue on the task or behavior. In these instances, the feeling region of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Sometimes the reactions of the feeling brain are so strong that it dominates our behaviors and we're unable to think rationally in the moment. Our emotions hijack our brain. While many of our emotional responses happen subconsciously, our thinking can influence our emotions, and sometimes this can be unhelpful. Just thinking about something threatening can trigger an emotional response. This is where we can manage our emotions with conscious thinking. Our emotions play a powerful role in the way we experience the world. Understanding and regulating our emotions through our thoughts and behaviors can help us take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. So that was a discussion on emotion in that little video. And I want to open that up by just kind of saying, okay, well, is emotion just that? Is it just chemical reactions from our brain affecting the rest of us through essentially the release of these chemicals? I think that's a rhetorical question. I think we can all say that it is probably more than just that in the way we define emotion. But one could define emotion as purely a chemical and brain state process. Well, let's introduce this idea of emotion itself, okay? So TOK and the TOK curriculum treats emotion as one of the 4 major ways of knowing, okay? Most people, when they start to analyze the relationship between emotion and knowledge, it's easy to go first to the idea that emotion is a barrier, right? That emotion kind of prevents knowledge. It doesn't really help knowledge. There's good reason for that. There's good reason that when we're really angry or we're really bored or we're really frightened, we're not really thinking in a way that we can acquire knowledge. If you guys had to sit in math class and be constantly afraid of, like, say there was like live cobras in the classroom, it'd be very difficult for you to acquire the knowledge of mathematics, right? Or in a slightly creepier example, if you're sitting in history class and there's someone who's sitting right beside you who you find emotionally attractive, it might be very difficult for you to focus on the content of your IB history class, just as another example, okay? So we often tend to go easily to the idea that emotion can stand as a barrier, okay? All right. So when recovering from an emotional outburst, we often say things like, I don't know what came over me, or I was feeling very emotional. But at the same time as we criticize emotions, emotions mean a lot to us. We need them. We kind of really, really want them. We want to create emotional experiences. We want to feel good. We want to feel happy. We want to enjoy humor and things like that, okay? But then if we start to turn the idea around, and you sometimes hear people say things like, I think I'll trust my gut. So if someone presents some knowledge to you and you're like, well, I'm not sure if I trust that. Well, then you can say, well, I kind of trust my gut. That is you appealing to emotion as a decider in terms of sort of your acquisition of knowledge. Now, I want to use that class pondering moment and give you guys the chance to type in the chat window right now. Which emotion do you think is the most difficult to control? And again, I'm not going to give you a list of emotions. You can pick whichever emotion you think is the most difficult for you to control. So maybe it's easy for you to control your happiness. Maybe it's more difficult to control your anger, okay? So far I've seen love, I've seen sadness is difficult to control, depression, panic. For me, it might be disgust. If I'm disgusted by something, that's difficult for me not to be disgusted by something. So that's some good answers there you guys are putting there. And you can see it's not the same for everybody. Sometimes you will see some similarities, right? 2 people have put in sadness down, right? But love is certainly not sadness. So we all have different kind of emotions that might be more difficult to control. Maybe, as someone put in the chat window, it's more than one. Maybe it isn't just one emotion. Maybe it's all of them. Maybe you feel you are a highly emotional person and it's difficult to control all of your emotions, okay? So those are some great answers you guys are giving. All right. So let's talk about the specific nature of emotion, right? Like, what are we talking about there? So it's etymology, or its word origin, is from a Latin verb, which essentially meant to move, right? So the object, the action of moving something. So we hear that sort of analogy to emotions, that, you know, like that song really moved me. You might hear someone say that. That just essentially means that it had an emotional impact. So that's where the word came from. It meant moving you in some way, okay? But emotion can be subcategorized, as I say here, to things like feeling, like I had a feeling, or I have a passion, or I'm in a certain mood. Those might indicate levels of emotion, right? From something that can go as simple as I'm just mildly bored or mildly irritated, to I'm just out of control angry, or I'm so incredibly sad I can't control myself. I'm just absolutely weeping with emotion, okay? So the word passion, we tend to put with emotion to mean a really strong emotional reaction, right? No one is like passionately irritated. Passion is a word that describes a real strong sense of emotion. Okay. Whereas mood might be something that you could have over a long period of time. Okay. So as I state there, you could be in a bad mood all day, but during that day, while you're in a bad mood, maybe somebody tells you a good joke. And so for a moment in your bad mood day, you might enjoy the humor and you might feel happy for a little while, but your bad mood might last all day. So we can use different words and sort of categorize emotions in different ways. Okay, now you'll notice I have the word intuition on this slide. In TOK 10 years ago, I used to teach intuition as part of this unit called emotion. And then the IB realized that maybe this is something they wanted to break off and make a separate topic. I don't necessarily agree with that. Classical philosophical thought might put intuition within emotion, but it is interesting to study it on its own. But you can see me putting the word intuition in here because intuition is maybe something you could define emotionally. Okay, so now let's get into some of the psychologist content here. This will kind of get us towards the end of this discussion and the end of my remote learning session with you guys for today. Okay, all right, so according to psychologists, they have defined 6 basic or primary emotions. Okay. Now, this is something that we can debate, right? Primary emotions. And I want to actually draw a comparison to those of you who take visual arts, or maybe in some ways have studied visual arts. So you might have heard of something called the primary color wheel. Okay. Which is that there are these primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, that are then used to build secondary colors or tertiary colors, right? So maybe you can see here that red, violet, and blue, green, that from the primary colors, secondary colors are built, right? And then they have further colors that can be built out from there, right? So let's use that analogy to draw into the same way we could define emotion. That psychologists say there are 6 primary emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. And the way they've defined those psychologically is that these are emotions that are shown in human beings as young as infancy. So even before humans develop the ability to speak, they show these 6 primary emotions. And that they're not learned emotions. They're not secondary emotions where you're kind of a more refined version of that, but these are the primary ones. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up today on this slide, but I want to ask you guys a question that you can either speak out loud to, or you're welcome to, just make sure my speaker's on. Yep. Or you're welcome to type into chat right now, which is, let me just put that slide back up. Do you feel that there's an emotion, a primary emotion missing from this list? Do you feel that maybe the psychologist missed one? Is there an emotion you feel is a real primary emotion? Okay, like for example, I would say that I see someone put fear already on there. Fear is on there, so fear is a primary emotion. One that's not on that list of 6. So for example, one I don't think should be on primary emotions would be greed, right? Greed is a secondary emotion to me. Greed is something that, babies don't necessarily show greed, right? Greed might be something that you could sort of develop as you sort of mature and understand things a bit more. But what would you say, is there one that's missing from that? I see the word relief. Okay. Maybe. Okay. One that I find most students tend to see is missing is one you guys have already listed back at the beginning of this class, which was love. You notice love isn't on here. Is love, for example, a primary emotion? You don't need to answer that. It's just something to think about that. Is love something we see in infants? Another way that psychologists have said is these are also emotions you can see in other animals, including other primates. because they don't necessarily have the capacity for language, right? So for example, could you say you see these 6 primary emotions in maybe one of your pets? Can you see happiness in your dog? Can you see anger in your cat, or disgust or surprise? Are these emotions you can identify in other animals? So they're very primary emotions. Okay. So I'm going to leave you guys on that thought, and we're going to pick up on this discussion tomorrow. So please think about that. Think about, is there a way to define emotions as terms of primary versus secondary, sort of like the way color theory shows that we have red and green, or red and blue and yellow as primary colors, and then there's colors that develop from those. And that's where we're continue our discussion tomorrow. Do you agree with what the psychologists have put here, or do you feel that there's more to this theory than just the theory of primary emotion? Okay, gang. So before I disconnect you guys for today, I'll leave it open for any questions, and I just want to scan to make sure those couple students who I didn't see by the end of the class, Wendy and Ian, yeah, never did eventually connect. So just Wendy and Ian were the only 2 I had marked absent on the class. Okay, guys, have a great day. It's supposed to be nice weather again today. Tomorrow will be rainy, so good day for TOK. Everything we did today I have recorded, and I'm about to turn off that recording. And